Good morning or good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the InduSoft Web Studio webinar about best practices for system integrators. Thanks for attending the webinar. My name is Fabio Terezinho, and I will be co-hosting this webinar with John Dunlap, also from InduSoft. We divided this presentation in three parts. The first one, I'll provide some best guidelines, some tips and tricks, and I'll try to make it as quick as possible. Then John will talk briefly about the Certified System Integrator program that is currently available for InduSoft Web Studio System Integrators, and he'll talk about some enhancements that we are planning to do on the program. And then we'll open for Q&A, and we'll try to leave as much time as possible for Q&A. And if you have any questions or any comments during the presentation or at the end of the presentation, feel free to write your questions at the chat box, which is available on the top of your monitor on the WebEx bar, or also on the Q&A box, which is also available on the WebEx bar on the top of your monitor. So having said that, let's start with part one. I divided the best practices, tips, and advices here in 7 categories. When designing a new project, tags database, graphical interface, general guidelines, performance optimization, troubleshooting, and when deploying the project. So for each one of those topics, I will discuss a few guidelines, a few advices and suggestions that are typically useful when designing, developing, and deploying projects within the InduSoft Web Studio. So first, when designing a project, as most of you know from the development environment of InduSoft Web Studio, when you create a new project, you define a name for the project, like webinar morning, for example. You define a folder. All the projects, all the files, configuration files for this project will be in this folder. And then you define the resolution for the application. As most of you know, for PC applications, for any applications running on regular PC applications, you have the option to rescale the application to different resolutions automatically during the runtime. So by default, the application is created with the resolution on your monitor, but you can modify that for any other resolution you want and even type a different resolution if the target station has a different resolution. You can say OK here. Even after you create the project, you can convert the application to different resolutions using here the Convert Resolution tool. But the main characteristic here, the main suggestion is try to use the aspect ratio as the application resolution that keeps the aspect ratio between width and height of your target station. So whether your target station has the resolution 800 by 600 or 1024 by 768, whatever it is, try to create a project with the same aspect ratio that your runtime station has. Because if you come to Project Viewer and enable the option for screen scaling, and I can do that for PC applications. So if I go to Local Interface, for example, I can enable auto screen scaling. During the runtime, your graphical screens will automatically rescale on the fly to fit the resolution on your monitor, but they will keep the aspect ratio between width and height based on the application resolution. So if the resolution of your monitor has a different ratio, you're going to have a gray area, either on the right side or at the bottom of your monitor. Even in this case, you can go back to the development environment and use Convert Resolution to convert the resolution of your entire application to a different aspect ratio, but in this case, you'll be distorting the application. So circles will become ellipses, square will become rectangles, and things like that. The platform and the license is also defined when you create a project in the wizard, and you can modify it at any time through the project tab. So you can come here and define a different license level. And it's especially important for two reasons. It warns you, if you know upfront how many tags you intend to use, what license you intend to use, and as you see here, each license supports a different number of tags. Once you define a target system, a license type, the development environment warns you when you reaches the limits, and especially if you define the platform for Windows Embedded, which is Windows Embedded Compact, Windows CE, and Windows Embedded Standard, or regular Windows, the development environment automatically filters the features and the options that are available for each one of those platforms. So it's a good practice as much as possible to define the platform you intend to use as soon as you know it, even though the application itself is absolutely the same for any license level. Before starting the project, it's good practice also to review the project settings, especially here in Project Viewer, where you can define settings that apply to the complete for the whole graphical interface. Things like auto screen scaling, if you want to show question marks when the quality is not good, if you want to enable or not the virtual keyboard. You can change those settings at any time, but it's a good practice to give an overview about those. One, to find out what kind of options you have, global options you have for the graphical interface, and two, to make sure that as soon as you start testing the product, you do so with the settings that you defined for your project. Same thing for communication, same thing for options. And we'll talk about some particular options and communication settings a few slides ahead here. The touch screen settings, as most of you know, InduSoft Web Studio supports touch screen for many, many years. And more recently, we added support for multi-touch. So if I run the standard PC demo and go to Features, Multi-Touch, I can demonstrate features used in the product to use multi-touch with inertia, ability to zoom screens in and out, pan screens in and out, clicking two buttons at the same time to enable commands, and use as many multi-touch points as your device supports. Now, when you go back to Viewer here, you have multi-touch settings, and you can define multi-touch global settings for each screen style: dialog, overlapped, pop-up, and replaced. So again, it is advisable to either enable or disable multi-touch for each screen size, and change the setting for multi-touch in each screen size before or during the application development, as well as virtual keyboards, which is typically enabled when you are running the application in a touchscreen device. Also, make sure you don't use, if you're running the application in a touchscreen device, avoid using interfaces that are not typically available in a touchscreen device, like keyboard shortcuts or right-click events for mouse commands. Translation, when you design the application, especially if you intend to translate this application to other languages, make sure that you leave enough real estate on the screen for the translated text. So, for example, if I want to create a label here, and I define something level, and here I create something like a text box to show the level. If I translate this and level happens to be to have more characters in a different language, I do not have enough space on the screen for the new words. So in this case, it's a good idea to leave additional space here, and even use objects that allows you to wrap the text automatically during the runtime, like for instance the rectangle. So if I want to have a label here, a caption, I can create the rectangle with fill and so on. Go to caption, write my caption, like for instance, level. Make sure I enable multi-line and wrap text. Maybe give enough space for 2 lines or so. And if I just want to see the label, I can align the object, the text, and say no border, no fill. So it looks just like the text, but since it's a caption within the rectangle, if you translate it to something that requires more space, it's going to use any area available in this rectangle. And by default, it can even wrap the text if you have more than 1 word. So those are some simple guidelines that you can follow that can avoid a lot of rework, especially in projects that we intend to display in different languages. Under the project communication tabs, by the way, here in project settings, those are global settings for the whole application. And if you go to communication, there is this option driver and OPC with 2 options, send every state and send last state. This option affects both the native drivers and the OPC interface, as described in the label, and it affects the writing commands from InduSoft Web Studio to the devices, to the PLCs. And if you select Send Every State, every single command is buffered and sent to the device. If you select Send Last State, the commands are not buffered. So if you have a button and you press the button, let's say on the on down, you set a tag, and on up, you reset the tag. So you write 1 to the tag on the on down and write 0 to the tag on the on up. If you select Send Last State, it's possible that you can click the button so fast that by the time the driver receives the information, you have already executed the on down and the on up. So the send last state will only send the value 0 to the PLC. It will not send the value 1 as well. If you select send every state, even if you click the button faster than the cycle of the driver, the command 1 and 0 both will be buffered in a communication queue, and when the driver eventually executes the commands, it sends the value 1, and then it will send the value 0. So depending on the application, if you have jogging, those kind of commands, is a good practice to select send every state. Otherwise, you can select send last state to avoid buffering information and sending all the information to the PLC if you just care about the last value. Tags database. As you know, in the InduSoft Web Studio, you can create the tags database in a very simplistic way, just defining tag names and associating basic types to the tags, Boolean, integer, real, or string. And I'm not going to go into details, but the tags database offers many additional options that allows you to optimize the tags database design and reuse the same tags, the same structures, while you are designing the screens, the logics, the communication, and so on. So arrays, any tag can be an array, just define an array size different from 0 in the array column. Classes, you can create classes and encapsulate information from tags in a class. They are like structures, and then when you create a tag, you can create a tag from that particular class type, and that tag will have all the members defined in the array. Again, a nice way to encapsulate properties and organize your tags database in structures. All the tags have what we call fields, and the syntax to access the fields is the tag name dash greater than, and the name of the tag field, like for instance timestamp, and it returns respective properties of the tags. So you have properties like timestamp, quality, high limit for alarms, high limits, ACK, and so on and so forth. So all the tags have several fields, and a tip, you can go to the help to see all the the options or the fields for any tags, but if you are in a script interface and you type a tag name and click --, the IntelliSense automatically shows you all the fields available for that particular tag. And if you want to know what each field means, you can go to the help manual, go under tags, fields, and find a description and examples for each one of them. Using tag fields is usually a good way to, number one, minimize the number of tags you use in the application and use properties that are tied to the tag. So instead of creating another tag to change the high limit for alarms, you can change the high limit for a particular tag alarm, changing the high limit property linked to the tag, not using and managing additional tags. Not only tag names, especially tag names, but pretty much any names on the application, like screen names and so on, should be as objective as possible. You can write tag names with up to 1024 characters, but I recommend not to. As long as you provide enough information in the tag name to understand what the tag does and to be easy to browse for this tag within the application, the shorter the name, in my opinion, the better. And you have the option to enable retentive values and parameters for any tags. So if I select any tag here and go to Home Properties, I can make the value of this tag retentive, which means that if I shut down the application or the computer and restart it, when I restart the application, it retrieves the last value for this tag. It's a useful feature in some cases, but keep in mind that to make it possible, when you make a tag retentive, every time this tag changes of value, we update a file in the system with the new value of the tag. So avoid setting all the tags or too many tags as retentive to avoid too many accesses to this file and decrease the performance of the whole application. Tag integration is a relatively new feature in the product, was introduced maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and we're evolving, creating new interfaces, new data sources for the tag integration. And if you come here to project communication, you can add what we call tag integration to your project. And the whole idea here is to allow you to link your project to the PLC programming files and literally browse the tags from your PLC program from the application. So today we have tag integration for TwinCat, CodeSys, RSLogix 5000 for the Allen Bradley ControlLogix PLCs, Allen Bradley PLC 5 and Slick PLCs, Automation Direct Coil and PAC 3000, and Schneider Unity Modbus. So for those data sources, you can enable tag integration in your project, and as you create the application, you can browse tags from the PLC program, and as you use them in the application behind the scenes, InduSoft creates the tags and links the InduSoft tags to the PLC tags automatically for you. So you can save time and avoid errors using the tag integrations for the data sources currently supported by the product. In tag description, each tag can have a description, especially for future maintenance. It's a good practice to write some descriptions here, some comments, so it's easier to understand the meaning for the tags, and if someone else or even yourself has to maintain the project in the future. Screen interfaces. InduSoft Web Studio allows you to create what we call screen groups, which is the ability to add more than one screen to a given alias, to a given name. And during the runtime, when you open screens, you can open the group, and all the screens from that group are opened at the same time. InduSoft Web Studio allows you to open more than one screen at the same time, even in different coordinates. And it's extremely useful to avoid rework, to save time on development when you change the application, and to increase the performance. to use screen groups. Like in this particular example, the header on the top is one screen. So if I go to this startup group, the header is one screen, the home is another screen, the menu left is another screen, the status bar at the bottom is another screen, and I set those screens with different coordinates in a manner that it looks to the operator that is a single screen. But during the runtime, I can keep switching just the screen here in the middle, for example, and I do not have to replace the header, the menu bar, the status bar. And if I want to make a change on the header, for example, I can do it just once on the header screen, and any other combinations of screens will show the same header. So I do not have to keep redoing this over and over. So I strongly recommend using groups of screens and more than one screen open at the same time to save time and performance during the runtime. Reuse screens. The tags databases allows you to use arrays, indirect tags, and mnemonics to reuse the screen to different contexts. If you want to see some examples, you can use the standard PC demo that comes with the application and go, for instance, to food and beverage and see how you can reuse, for instance, the same pop-up to open and close any valve that I click on the screen. So even though this pop-up affects just one valve at a time, it can be used for all the valves, and I reuse the same pop-up screen for all the valves. So whenever you are repeating, redesigning the same screen, the same logic, most likely there is a way to reuse the original screen just once and not create several copies of the same screen or very similar screens. In any screen, there is an option called background picture. If you right-click on the screen and go to, screen attributes, you have the option background picture, and it enables you to create a screen background with different formats, and this picture will be displayed behind the objects, behind the screens, so it's not updated during the runtime to improve performance. It's updated only when you open the screen because it's static. And if you want to reuse the same background to more than one screen, you can even use the shared image and type here the name of the image you want to use as the background. So several screens can share the same background picture, and by this way you can minimize the number of files and pictures you have on the application and improve the performance during the runtime as well. And as much as possible, I recommend using formats that provide a better resolution with a smaller size, like PNGs or even JPEGs instead of BMPs. You can use all those different formats, but a PNG typically will provide you a resolution as good or even better than a BMP, and typically the file size is smaller, so it takes less time to retrieve it from the file and display on the screen. Linked symbols is extremely powerful and easy to use interface in the product. Is the ability for you to create your own objects, define properties that you want to customize for each instance of this object, and reuse this object over and over throughout the application. For example, if you go to the wind screen on the PC demo, you can see this linked symbol called wind turbine that was created for this application, but you can create your own or even edit existing ones just coming to edit linked symbol. And let's do something quick and dirty here, like create this circle and tell this circle to change color according to the tag blink slow, something dummy. Once I change the master symbol, all the instances of this symbol throughout the whole application are updated, and during the runtime, you see that it's functional. So using linked symbols, you have the ability to define the architecture of a group of objects, what's called a linked symbol, use it throughout the application, exposing only the properties that should be different from symbol to symbol. And if you have to make a change in the future, like if the end user defines that they want you to change the colors in a particular interface, or if they want you to add something to particular objects, you do not have to change each instance of the symbol manually. You just change the master ones, and all the instances are automatically updated. So using linked symbols properly can save you a lot of time when designing and redesigning projects, not to mention that you can export those symbols to the product library. If I come here, under screens, you see your project symbols. You can right-click on any symbol and send it to the System Symbols library, which means that this symbol will be available for any other projects that you create in that computer. For applications where you use translation, the translation tool, you can use the X function to translate text used in external dialogues like message box or input box. So if I have anywhere here on the application, let's say a button that shows a message box, let's say here in VBScript, message box, hello. This text, by default, will not be translated on the message box by the translation tool from InduSoft Web Studio. But if you use the built-in function X to translate this string before calling the message box, like I'm doing here, the message box will display the translated text to whatever language you set to your application during the runtime. In general, avoid spaces and special characters in file names. You can create screen names, for instance, with spaces, but I recommend avoiding that, especially when you want to use WebThing clients or expose those screens through a web server. Some web servers pose some limitations with files with screen names. Add comments to scripts and worksheets. In VBScript, you can add comments using either double slashes or single quotes. So it's always a good practice to add comments, and always using also good sense. So not adding comments to say for every single line necessarily, but for blocks of scripts that allows you or someone else understand the main idea of the script. As you know, InduSoft Web Studio has tools to create history of events, alarms, and trends. And by default, InduSoft will keep saving data to the history and never deleting it. And since storage memory is limited, it's always a good practice to define a limit for the history files or databases. So InduSoft automatically deletes the data that is older than the limit. So if you go to project options, you can define a history lifetime in days for alarm history and event history. And for each trained worksheet, if you go to advanced, you can define a history lifetime also in days for the history of each trained worksheet. So you can define history tags that should be kept, for instance, for 30 days in one group, for 1 year in another group, for 1 day in another group. But defining those limits, you make sure that the history will not keep growing indefinitely and eventually consume all the storage space available in your device. Very important tip, not to call model dialogues like the message box, input box, RD file and functions from the server when using the thin clients. So if I create a function in global procedures and I call a message box, for instance, in global procedures, and I call this global procedures from the screen using the function run global procedure on server, the function will be executed on the server, and the message box will be opened on the server, not on the thin client. And especially in situations where you have blind servers where nobody is watching the server, the message box will appear there on the server, and you have nobody to acknowledge the message box and close it. So the script will be pretty much stuck there. So when you use model dialogues, make sure you use them on the scope of the viewer and not of the server, not in a background script per se, always on the screen. And whenever you do anything with paths, as long as possible, keep files and reports within the project folder and use the built-in function getAppPath whenever you define the paths in the scripts. GetAppPath returns the current path where your project is running from, and if you follow those rules, you can freely move your project from computer to computer, from directory to directory, and the application will keep working because the paths will be dynamically adjusted according to the getAppPath function. Avoid repeated scripts. InduSoft Web Studio provides the global procedures interface, and in the current version allows you even to insert additional global procedure files, so you can create different libraries of functions. And back to the comments of not repeating anything in the application, whenever you have a piece of code that you want to write more than once, let's say something that checks the status of a record in the database. Instead of rewriting this piece of code over and over in different places, create a function in global procedures and just call this function whenever you need to. When applicable, use onError, resume next, and onError, go to 0. So in VB script, let me write a script here, function test in function. In VB script, you can create interfaces like, for instance, A is equal to 10 divided by B, but if B is 0, you're going to have a division by 0, and everything after this exception will not be executed. If you have any piece of code where you could have an error and you want to make sure you continue to execute the script when you have an error, the piece of code that you want to protect, you can write onError, resume next, and onError, go to 0. Doesn't have to be just for one line. It could be for a whole block of script, but everything between those two statements will not stop the execution of the script if it finds an error like an execution by 0, an object that does not exist, anything like that. And then you can treat this error and analyze this error by built-in variables like error code, error description, and so on and so forth. Make sure that if you use the built-in function dbCursorOpen to query data from the database, or dbCursorOpenSQL, either one of those two functions, to query, select data from a database, use the function dbCursorClose to release the data set from the memory. Otherwise, you have a memory leaking in your application, because each time those functions, dbCursorOpen and dbCursorOpenSQL, are executed, they query data from the database and they keep the data set in memory until you call the dbCursorClose function to release it from the memory. When using the recipe tasks, I strongly recommend to enable XML. So if you go to tasks under recipes, you can enable the option Save as XML. It will give you much more flexibility to add members or remove members from the recipe, not breaking compatibility with previous versions of the application and files. When using thin clients, enable the SSL as the web tunneling gateway for security reasons. So if you go to Project, Web, Advanced, you have the option to enable Web Tunneling Gateway and enable SSL. And by this way, you can use Microsoft IIS as the web server for your application, And in IIS, you can enable SSL security SOC layer to encrypt the information exchanged between the WebSync client and your server. So you can use HTTPS between the thin clients and the server. And for security reasons, especially when the thin clients hit the server from an external network, is extremely important configuration to improve the security of the connection between the thin clients and the server. And by the way, even though InduSoft Web Studio installs a built-in web server called ntwebserver.exe, which is useful for training and for presentations in small tests, for real-world applications, we strongly recommend to use IIS Web Server for 3 reasons. Performance, it's much faster. Number 2 is stability, it's much more stable. And number 3, security. It allows you to configure many additional layers of security, including SSL. NT Web Server was not designed for real-world applications, was designed only as a quick web server for demonstrations and trainings, but not designed for real-world applications. Some general guidelines to adopt consistency for navigation, color schema, and nomenclature of objects, just to make it easier to navigate through the application and use the application in general during the runtime. As you probably know, InduSoft is migrating the complete graphical interface to HTML5, and in the current version, most of the graphical interface is already available as HTML5 in what we call Studio Mobile Access. So if I run the project, I can save the screens, publish the screens as HTML, and after I do so, I can open a browser, any browser that supports HTML5, including Safari on iPads, iPhones, Chrome on Android, Internet Explorer on Windows, and type the IP address of the server /ma/index.htm * screen equal the name of the screen I want to open, for instance, animations. And then by typing a valid username and password, I have access to that graphical screen on the browser with auto screen scaling, so I do not have to worry about the resolution on the browser, and everything rescales and works properly on the browser. There are a few interfaces that are not supported yet in HTML5, and when you trigger the command to save all screens as HTML, the output window will automatically tell you which interfaces you are using in the project that are not supported in HTML5 yet. And eventually, in next version of InduSoft Web Studio, the goal is to support all the interfaces as HTML5. But in the current version, all the shapes and all animations are already supported. And there are a few objects that are not yet, and we pretty much list them on the output window for you. Performance optimization. For communication with devices, when you're communicating with PLCs that use memory address for values, use sequential address, consider enabling simultaneous requests for TCP/IP drivers especially. So if I add any driver here that communicates over TCP/IP, like MultiCP, for example, if I go to Settings, Advanced, I can enable the number of simultaneous requests in number of simultaneous requests per station, per node, per PLC. So let's say if you have 5 PLCs in your network, you can define 5 and 1, and during the runtime, the application pretty much has 5 instances of this driver running in parallel, each one of them communicating with a different PLC. So the overall performance is greatly increased. And if one PLC becomes offline, for example, it does not decrease the performance communicating with the remaining PLCs in the network. Consider the option screen or auto for the main driver sheet and OPC interfaces. You have the option auto or screen, and the whole idea is for tags that you just use to display values on the screen. You do not use for alarms, recipes, history, nothing. Just to display the online value on the screen. It makes sense to pull this value from the PLC, from the device, only when you have a screen open during the runtime displaying this value. So setting the scan to screen or auto allows you to do just that. The driver is smart enough to start scanning that tag if it is being displayed in a screen, and stop scanning that tag to optimize the communication performance when that tag is not displayed in any screen. Adjust the sync periods for communication with thin clients. Here in Project Web, you have the sync periods, and you can define how often the server must update the clients and vice versa with updated values, so you can make it faster to update the thin clients. You can minimize these periods, like for instance 100 milliseconds, to update the thin clients faster, or you can increase this period, let's say 5 seconds, if you want to optimize bandwidth, especially in expensive links like satellite or cell phone modem. Trained decimation can greatly increase the performance when retrieving data from a database and displaying this on the screen. So if I go to any screen here and create a trained control, under Advanced, you have the option Decimation, which by default has 248 points. What it means is no matter how many points you are retrieving from the history, it's going to display the information on the screen with the resolution of up to 2,048 points. And as long as the width of your trained does not have more than 248 pixels, you're going to have the same resolution, the complete resolution, but you're going to optimize the performance to display the information, because only the minimum points to display the information on the screen will be sent from the database gateway to the trained. And if your trained has less than 2,048 pixels in width or more than that, you can adjust the number of maximum points in these fields. But bottom line, enabling decimation can greatly improve the performance when displaying data on the trained history data on the trained screen, especially when you are retrieving a lot of points, thousands or millions of points from the database. Avoid using large pictures on objects, especially in low-end HMIs like Windows Embedded Standard, Windows Embedded Compact, known as Windows CE. From the troubleshooting point of view, InduSoft Web Studio provides several tools like the output window, the database spy, cross-reference to cross-reference any tag throughout the whole application, the trace function that you can use in any script to send a message to the output window, and in most recent versions, for any script, you can enable debugging tools. So you can add breakpoints to your scripts and run the application in debug mode, and the script will stop as soon as it finds a breakpoint, and you can step into, you can move the mouse on the variables to see the variables values, and so on and so forth. Finally, when deploying the project, there's a checklist that I typically follow to make sure the project is as clean as possible. So I clear everything from the database spy, from all the tabs in the database spy. I disable the option Save to Disk from Logwin if it is enabled. I remove test files from the HST, alarm, and web dump subfolders of the application. I remove unused tags from the project. We have an automatic way to do that. If you just come here and click on Remove Unused Tags, InduSoft scans the whole application for tags that are not being used, and it shows you the whole list of tags that exists in the tags database, but they are not being used anywhere, at least not explicitly used anywhere. And then gives you the option to select the ones you know you're not using indirectly, for example, and then just remove them from the project. Right now there is none, otherwise it would show the list and give you the option to delete them or not. Quality feedback, here in project preferences, you have the option to generate logs if errors occur. You might want to disable them to make sure it does not generate dumps if you do not have a lot of storage space available in the system, or enable them if you want to troubleshoot the application during the runtime. Run the verify command to resave all the screens, and it's going to show all the errors to you, if any, in the output window. Plus, it's going to improve the performance during the runtime because all the files will share the same text database version. Apply intellectual property protection. InduSoft Web Studio has an option to apply intellectual property to your project. If you want to protect particular documents like worksheets or even screens, you can just right-click on the document and enable the option password protection. And if you define a password, that document will be saved encrypted with that password, and only if you have that password you can edit the object. And if you want to do that for the whole application, for all the documents, here in Verify, you can set a password for all files, and all application files will be set and encrypted with that password. So even if another person, another system integrator, has a valid license for InduSoft Web Studio and has a complete copy of the project, they will not be able to edit your screens or see your scripts, see your configuration, unless they know the password you used to encrypt the project. So great feature to protect intellectual property in the projects. And obviously create a backup. The whole application is in a single folder, the folder you used when you created the project. It's a good practice to zip this code and keep a backup of the application so you can easily restore or enhance it in the future. Having said that, I'm going to pass control to John Dunlap, and I'll let him talk about the InduSoft System Integrator program.
Well, thank you, Fabio. Hey, good morning, everyone. Fabio, I'm not sure I'm in control. Okay, now I've got it. See if we can get this. Fabio, I can't get the slides to index. If you wouldn't mind taking control and doing that, please.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, let's go ahead to the next one. Okay. Well, again, good morning, everyone. The goal of our Certified Integrator program is to have a number of qualified trained partners that end users who want to use the InduSoft product for an application or machine builders can call upon to help them for engineering assistance. This is a win-win for both us and our system integrator partners. Okay, Fabio? Yeah, thank you. And again, we view our system integrators as partners of InduSoft, and to help you with getting going on our technology, we provide free training. If you want to come to our class, our classes are held in Austin, Texas, and are typically a week long. And as many of you know, we also offer our training online free of charge. For our certified integrators, we also offer free development licenses. These are annual licenses that get renewed every year, and they allow you to develop free of charge. Of course, then once the project is developed, the end customer would pay for that runtime license. We also like to collaborate with you from a sales and marketing standpoint. By that, we put you on our website to give a profile of your company and contact information. We like to do case studies. So if you've got a particular project you've done, which whether it's in water, wastewater, energy management, anything that others might be interested in, we're always looking for new case studies to do. So, please let us know on projects that you're working on, and if we know of them, we might seek you out and see if we can get a case study from you. We like to also have our partners participate in webinars we do. The one that we're doing today is more of a technology-oriented webinar, but once a month we also do webinars talking about particular applications. So we'd like to have our system integrator partners participate in that as well. And when we get leads from our website, people looking for an integrator, we look to pass those off to our partners as well. And then finally, there's a certified logo that we have that you can use and put on your website as well. Today we have in our Certified Integrator program approximately 130 integrators, and 70 of those are located in North America. The rest obviously scattered throughout the world. And we're looking to grow that pretty substantially over here in the next couple years. So we're looking to at least double, if not triple that here in the next couple years. Okay, so what's involved with the Certified Integrator program? There's an initial application that you send in, and that really just lets us learn a little bit about you. Once we get that, there's a test that you need to take. This is an annual test that you take. Today it's a written test, and then you submit a project. Once that's completed, we'll also be after you for information that we can put on our website to put a profile about you. And one point I wanted to make here is that unlike many of our competitors, we do not charge for your participation in this program. Again, we recognize that learning a product is an investment, and we want to find partners that are willing to work with us and represent us and our products to customers. Okay, so one other thing I wanted to touch on today is some of the upcoming changes to the program. We're moving to an online testing system as we start adding more and more system integrators. It's becoming a bit of a challenge to get through the evaluation of all these tests and get back to you in a prompt manner. So we're looking to automate that testing process, and then we're going to eliminate the submission of the project requirement. We also have a system integrator portal. This is mostly done today, but we're waiting to get the online testing component done. And what the idea behind this portal is for our system integrator partners, this is a portal that you can go into and easily find everything you need, to help you out with your daily requirements, whether it's downloading a data sheet that you need to take and present as part of a proposal, any application notes, sample applications, our training videos, link to taking that online test, downloading of software and drivers. Everything will be in one quick, easy-to-find location rather than have to go around our website trying to find the various components. Okay, an additional thing we're looking to implement in this upcoming program change is to have both a registered and certified integrator level. The certified integrator is one that is a little bit higher level, and the registered are ones where we typically would have an integrator that works with us maybe on 1 or 2 projects a year, but the certified may be doing work with us more frequently. We also want to put an increased emphasis on connecting up our distributor partners and integrator partners together to become more of a local sales and solutions team. And just a case in point, I had a customer that we were working with, an end user that wanted an integrator. They normally do things in-house, but they wanted to find an integrator partner to work with. And instead of our distributor pointing him to a certified integrator that was in their area, they ended up pointing him to another integrator that had never worked with us before. And so now we have to get that new integrator up to speed and all of that. So I think it's just would be much easier, if we could get the integrators and the distributors to work together to present, the solution to the end customer. We also are looking to step up our joint promotional activities. As I mentioned earlier, we want to do more case studies and joint webinars and improve our lead generation capability. So if any of you have case studies that you think would be interesting and other people want to hear about, please contact us. And we mentioned your company. We, of course, need approval from the end user to mention them in it, but we're always looking for case studies to do. And bottom line is we want to have an emphasis on the quality of our integrator program. We're not looking just to increase quantity. We do want to add more integrators to expand the scope of this program, but we're looking to get quality partners. Okay, and I think, Fabio...
Yep, excellent, John. Thank you. A much better job to cover the material in a timely manner than I did. We are almost on the top of the hour, but we're going to open for questions now. And John and I will be available for as long as necessary to cover questions. Not done so, feel free to write your questions on the Q&A box on the top of your monitor on the WebEx bar or on the chat box on the same bar. So we have a few questions already. The first one is, can two different versions of Web Studio, for instance 7.0 and 7.1 Spec 3, be installed simultaneously on the host computer? If so, can a single license key be used for both? The answer is yes. A nice thing is you can install more than one version of InduSoft Web Studio at the same time on the same computer. They are by default installed in different directories. For instance, here I have program files, InduSoft Web Studio 7.1 in this folder. If I install InduSoft Web Studio 7.0, it would be a different folder, and that's perfectly fine to have more than one version installed at the same time, as long as you run the application with one of them at any given time. And if you have a license, the license is good for the version in the license and any previous versions. So to answer your question, yes, a single license key can be used for more than one version. If the key is for version 7.1, it's good for 7.1 and 7.0. There are some restrictions regarding the type of key that you have for very, very old versions of the product, 6.0 or below. They supported old keys that we do not support anymore. It's just the hardware. But for 7.0 Spec 1 and any newer versions, we have keys that are supported by all those versions. And if you have a hard key for the most current version, it's good for the most current version all the way down to 6.0 Spec 1. So short answer to your question, yes, you can keep more than one version installed at the same time, and yes, you can share a single license for all those versions. Other question is on communication driver tag settings. If a tag is set to write plus read, could there be enough delay between the read and the write to cause missed reads, writes from target PLC? No, and the reason for not is the way the queue, the communication queue, is treated internally. And we had another webinar just to discuss communication in details and there is a tech note available to download on the website and from the DVD that explains this mechanism in details. But long story short, if you have a tag in the main driver sheet to read and write, and you change the value of the tag in the HMI, pretty much it's guaranteed that this value will be written to the PLC at one given point with higher priority than the reading commands. And after writing the value to the PLC, then we'll keep reading the value back. But the value, if you change the tag value in the HMI, this value will be written to the HMI. Either the last value or every single value that you changes on the tag, depending on the project communication settings, saying every state or saying the last state. But either way, if you change a tag value on the HMI at least once, at least the last value will be written to the PLC, or all the values will be written to the PLC if you select change every state. So you do not have to worry about timing the read and the write. You can define it to read plus write, and if you change the value on the HMI, the value will be written to the PLC. Can too many DB cursor opens without proper DB cursor close eventually use all available connections and refuse new connections? Yes, it's possible, depending on the database that you are using. The database, even depending on the version of the database, can have a maximum number of connections allowed. And from the troubleshooting point of view, the nice thing is, let me run this application, create a connection here. I have a connection here. So let's create a new database here. So to do a quick test, I'm going to create a new database called Webinar and create a new query. Let's say create table T with C1 integer, create a table in the database really quick. Very good. So here in InduSoft, I can create a connection with the webinar. Very good. And here in tasks, or even in the home screen, let's say, to do something quick, I can create a button. And in this button, write a script in SQL, select everything from the table T, no cur, DB cursor, open SQL from the connection DB, this SQL. And I'm going to do something I should not do, which is open the connection, not closing it, not calling the DB cursor close to close the connection. So I'll save it, I run it. So if I click on this button, it's going to create a connection with the database, retrieve the data, keep the data in memory, and I didn't close the connection. From the troubleshooting point of view, a nice feature is that you can come here to the database gateway in the Windows tray bar, this icon, and right-click and clicking hide to unhide this window. And if you go to monitor, you have the option connections, which shows all the connections that are currently open with the database. So if you keep calling the function DB open cursor open and never close it, eventually you're going to have a lot of connections here in this dialog, and it's an indication that you're doing something wrong and you have to go back there and fix the interface. So you have tools to identify and troubleshoot it. Here one question is the compact hard keys does not support version 6.1. Correct. There are the current version of InduSoft Web Studio supports two types of hard keys from two manufacturers. One is Sentinel, the other one is from a manufacturer called Weeble. And the Weeble offers hard keys in different form factors, including what's called the compact USB hard keys, which are really small. do not look like a large pen drive. It's just pretty much a very small cap in addition to the USB connector. And that one, the support for that hard key was introduced in the InduSoft Web Studio 7.1. So if you want to use the compact hard key, you can do that in the InduSoft 7.1 and newer. Can you please tell us more about the different requirements for the registered and certified integrators? So, John, I'll let you handle this one.
Yes, the requirement differences are there's going to be some testing level differences, and for the certified integrators, we're going to be looking for them to have a more active role with us in terms of number of projects that they do on an annual basis.
Very good. Another question is, whom do we contact to discuss registered certified integrators?
You can contact me. My email is John, John, Dunlap, Dunlap, at InduSoft.com.
So I'm writing here to everybody, and let's make it bigger. So John is in charge of this program, and feel free to email through this email address. So another question here. Let's see. Any way to read the active screen file name property or the open screens? For screens, there is a built-in function called Easy Screen Open. So if I come here, I have the function Easy Screen Open, and if you write here the name of the screen you want to check if it is open or not, it returns 1 if the screen is open. Or if I come here and close the screen, it will return 0 if the screen is not open. So since you can have several screens open at the same time, there is not one function that returns the name of the screen open, because you can have several. But you can create a function calling this Easy Screen Open to all screens in the project, or all the screens that matter to you in the project, and find out which one or which ones are open at any given time. Let's see. Another questions. Are there a maximum number of integrators by country? I'll let you handle this one, John.
Are there a maximum number that we allow? No, not at all.
Okay. Yeah, like John mentioned, the idea is to be a win-win. So the more integrators are willing to invest to learn about the product and use the product properly, is better to both of us. Our goal is to provide a powerful and user-friendly and stable tool to save time from the integrators and support them. And the integrators then make investment to learn the tool and use it properly. Okay, so it looks like we covered all the questions. Just a few additional questions came in. Does the thin client same periods apply to secure viewers? Very good question, and no. Here in Project Web, these same periods applies only to the web thin clients, and for the secure viewer thin clients, you can go to Project Communication and adjust these same periods for secure viewer thin clients and for FAT thin clients as well. Other stations running in the InduSoft Web Studio with the TCP/IP client worksheets. Very good question. Is it possible to have a slide Alt tab from the side of the screen to display a pop-up type of screen? Yes, and in the demo application, standard PC demo that is installed along with the product, we have an example on how to do that. If you go to Features, Multi-Touch, here to Screen Gestures, there is this tab here that I can slide up or slide down to show or hide the alarm interface. And I can go a little bit or a lot and so on. And you can see in this demo how it was done, but was pretty much using the position in InduSoft Web Studio with multi-touch. In upcoming versions of InduSoft, there will be other ways to do that, native ways of doing that, even without requiring you to create the objects manually and so on. But in the current version, you can do that following the example from the PC demo. So it looks like we covered all the questions. With that, I'd like to just show some contact information for InduSoft. Feel free to reach us by any manner you want, by chat, email, phone, and so on. And with that, again, thank you very much for each one of you for taking the time to attend the webinar. We do appreciate your support and your attention, and we'll be more than happy to follow up with you individually if you have any questions in the future. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening, and hope to see you again in the next webinar. Thank you.